What's going on, guys? It's Jimmy here. Welcome to our daily show where we discuss the fourth stimulus check update, the stimulus package update, daily news, money, investing, the stock market, pretty much everything you need to know about on a daily basis. Remember, new videos come out here on our channel every day at 10 a.m., 3 p.m., and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you find these videos helpful, don't forget to hit the like button for us down below. Remember that the Senate passed last week on Thursday night a debt limit increase to prevent the country from literally defaulting, would be a first ever default. And this is to prevent not only a country default and the Treasury Department from running out of money, but also would have possibly prevented Social Security payments from going out, child tax credit payments from going out, payments to servicemen, military from going out, bond payments from defaulting, and literally telling the world that we can't pay our payments. Now, the Senate has passed this bill, but the House has not yet passed this bill. So yeah, the Senate passed this bill on Thursday night, but the House is going to be voting on this tomorrow, on Tuesday. But we had a little bit of a fiasco after the vote because Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer basically blasted the Republicans for delaying the vote, and only for 11 Republicans voting yes. On the initial vote to proceed, they needed 10 Republicans. They only got 11. And instead of saying thanks to the 11 Republicans, he basically blasted them. And now Mitch McConnell, who was one of the 11 Republicans who voted yes, has basically vowed not to help the Democrats at all anymore. And the problem is that this vote that has passed the Senate to avert a first-time ever government default. Remember, it's a Treasury default. It's a debt limit default. It's not a government shutdown. That'll happen again as well in December. Because they passed only a short-term bill for that. They're going to have to do this again in early December if the Democrats do not pass the stimulus package as well by then, and don't include another debt limit increase before then. Now, just a week ago, the Democrats were saying they didn't want to pass a debt limit increase in the stimulus package. They didn't think that they should do it. They didn't think it was a thing that they should have to do by themselves. And now Mitch McConnell is saying, well, we're not helping you out anymore because Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer kind of blasted them right after they helped them pass the bill. Now, whether that was right or wrong, that's maybe up for you to decide. I had a lot of comments saying he should have did it because, well, the Republicans should have helped them and did their job anyways. A lot of people said, no, he shouldn't have did that. The 11 Republicans did help them pass the vote, and I had a lot of comments back and forth. Well, the problem is that we may have to do this again in 2 months, and now the Republicans are saying, well, listen, we just helped you pass that vote, and now since you basically publicly slammed us, we're not going to help you again. And now we could really run the risk of a government default yet again. Here's Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, and here's what she has to say for it. You're not going to believe this.
A week of cliffhangers in Washington, the economy at stake. Default has been avoided for now. Just enough Republicans joined Democrats to extend the debt ceiling until December, when deadlines on the debt, government funding, and the president's investment agenda will converge. What could be a make-or-break moment for Biden's presidency and America's economy. All this poses tough challenges for our headliner, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. Good morning, Madam Secretary.
Good morning. Thanks for the invitation.
So we all dodged a bullet this week, but Senator McConnell has warned President Biden that Republicans won't help next time on the debt limit. I want to read part of his letter to President Biden. Quote, I will not be a party to any future effort to mitigate the consequences of Democratic mismanagement. You lieutenants on Capitol Hill now have the time they claim they lacked to address the debt ceiling through standalone reconciliation and all the tools to do it. What are the consequences if he keeps his word?
Well, it's absolutely imperative that we raise the debt ceiling. That's necessary not to fund any new spending programs, but to pay the bills that result from Congress's past decisions. A group of business and community leaders met with President Biden and me last week to talk about the disastrous impact it would have for the first time America not paying its bills. 50 million Americans who receive Social Security payments would be put at risk. Our troops wouldn't know when or if they would be paid. The 30 million families that receive a child tax credit, those payments would be in jeopardy. And the nation's credit rating would be in jeopardy as well. U.S. Treasuries are the world's safest possible asset. That would be at risk as well. And that really underpins the reserve status, currency status of the dollar. So there's an enormous amount at stake. A failure to raise the debt ceiling would probably cause a recession and could even result in a financial crisis. It would be a catastrophe.
But Madam Secretary, we've seen this cycle so many times. At some points, the votes just aren't going to be there. Congress is going to make a mistake, a miscalculation. I know you support eliminating the debt limit. Have you convinced the president to back you on that?
Well, look, it's really up to Congress. Yes, I have said I support personally getting rid of the debt ceiling. I believe that once Congress and the administration have decided on spending plans and tax plans, it's simply their responsibility to pay the bills that result from that. And that means we've had deficits for most of the post-war period, and that means raising the debt ceiling. It's a housekeeping chore. We should be debating the government's fiscal policy when we decide on those expenditures and taxes, not when the credit card bill comes due.
You call it a housekeeping chore. Others say it's a charade at this point. Why not consider alternatives? Several members of Congress have recommended this $1 trillion coin.
Well, I wouldn't be supportive of a $1 trillion coin. I think it's a gimmick, and it jeopardizes the independence of the Federal Reserve. You would be asking to essentially print money to cover the deficit. This is a responsibility. It's a shared bipartisan responsibility. It's been raised almost 70 times since 1965, almost always on a bipartisan basis. And no one party is responsible for the need to do this. I believe it should be a shared responsibility, not the responsibility of any one party.
How about invoking the 14th Amendment as justification for continued borrowing? The text is pretty clear. The validity of the public debt of the United States should not be questioned. Why not invoke that?
Well, because it's Congress's responsibility to show that they have the determination to pay the bills that the government amasses. We shouldn't be in a position where we need to consider whether or not the 14th Amendment applies. That's a disastrous situation that the country shouldn't be in. I wouldn't want to see the president or myself faced with a decision about what to do if Congress refuses to let us pay the government's bills. What should you pay first? That's not a. We have to reassure the world that the United States is fiscally responsible and that they can count on us to pay our bills. And that's Congress's job to do that on a bipartisan basis.
There's a pretty decent, you don't want to be there, but there's a pretty decent chance you're going to be there on December 3rd. Is invoking the 14th Amendment on the table if Congress doesn't act?
I don't believe any president has ever had to make a decision about what they would do if Congress failed to raise the debt ceiling. I can't imagine our being there on December 3rd. I have confidence that Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer will be able to manage this so that we don't face this situation. This would be a self-manufactured crisis. that affects our economy at a time when we're recovering from the pandemic. We have a fragile recovery. It would be completely irresponsible and a self-inflicted wound that would affect businesses and households and the global economy and the status of the U.S. and the world. We shouldn't ever be in that position.
Yeah, see, there's a lot of things with this is that, and the problem with this is that the Republicans are vowing not to raise the debt ceiling come early December, which is 45 days away, maybe 50 days away at this point. And then we still have Democratic holdouts, Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema. The other problem is we have them trying to agree on the stimulus package. We have the problem with the prescription drug pricing that we discussed in the last video. I'll link it to that at the end of this video. They're really trying to, there's a big hurdle here that they're trying to pass the package with the prescription drug pricing issue. And they have to agree on that because that pays for the package. So the one of the ways they're paying for the large stimulus package is by lowering prescription drug prices. And by forcing pharmaceutical companies to lower their prescription drug prices by law, they're not asking the pharmaceutical companies, will you please nicely lower your prescription drug prices? They're going to force them by law. There's several different clauses in there. It's probably the whole pharmaceutical lowering prescription drug prices is probably going to be hundreds of pages, right? But one of the clauses in there is they want to force them by law to lower their prescription drug prices by saying that if you sell a prescription drug, say insulin, to another country for $9, you have to there by law sell it to the United States for $9 as well. That goes for the United States government, which buys hundreds of millions of dollars of medication through Medicare and Medicaid. And also then you have to also sell to any American for the same price. Now they're thinking about they may have to exclude it for private insurance because large pharma's got a large overreach and they're spending a lot of money here, and it's unfortunately it's just not a clear cut decision. It's of good versus evil, unfortunately, and I think battling big pharma is going to be very very tough. And as much as I want the good versus evil situation to win, in this case, big pharma being evil. As much as I want to say that big pharma, big pharmaceutical companies actually are good in some ways, that they have a lot of life-saving drugs and pharmaceuticals. We think about insulin as literally an asthma medication, blood pressure medication, even vaccines. It save people's lives. That there's a lot of corporate greed and stuff like that too, and they're literally spending millions and millions of dollars to make sure that they're not forced to lower their prescription drugs. So it's a very very tough battle here, and there's a lot of Republicans that don't want them to pass this bill. There's a lot of Democrats that don't want them to pass this bill. There's a lot of Democrats that want them to modify the wording on here, saying that this could stifle innovation. And there's a lot of people from both sides here that are just you kind of catch them with their hand in the cookie jar, saying, why are you defending pharmaceutical companies? Kind of makes you wonder who they're maybe getting paid from. And it's just it's one of those tough situations where you have to get the votes, and it's like these elected officials have some extracurricular activities, but at the end of the day, they're the ones who votes matter. Yeah. And yet this all ties into the debt ceiling yet again, because the debt ceiling is going to expire in 2 months and they have to pass that with the stimulus package. So they have to pass the next stimulus package here in the next several weeks and include the debt ceiling. And guess what? If they don't come to an agreement with passing the prescription drug pricing, if they don't pass the stimulus package, not only does Whatever stimulus items are going to be in there, the child tax credit, those monthly stimulus checks, those are going to go away at the end of the year. Those monthly stimulus checks going out to 65 million children, or monthly checks, whatever you want to call them, right? Those are going to stop. Those are no longer going to continue. And the debt ceiling is not going to get raised. So not only are the monthly checks to children going to stop, but the debt ceiling could not get passed because Republicans are vowing not to raise it, because Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer blasted them right after they helped them raise it, whether it was the Republicans' job to do it, which it was, in all fairness. Republicans should have just voted yes in the first place, to be honest. Let's be real. But there was 11 Republicans that did do their job and vote yes. And honestly, I had a lot of people saying, well, Jimmy, what would you have done if you were Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer? And to be honest, I would have went over to those 11 Republicans and I would have said, thank you for doing your job. And I wouldn't have thanked the 38 Republicans that didn't vote yes, because in all fairness, they didn't do their job. Their job is to pass the debt limit ceiling, because we can't default. We can't. That's literally the worst thing that could happen, is let the country default. I would have just politely went over to the 11 Republicans and said, thanks, guys. We came together. We did our job. Republicans and Democrats came together. And then I would have walked away and I would have worried about the next bill. But that's just me. You can let me know your thoughts. But the problem is now they got to do it again, or the Democrats got to pass a stimulus package and include the debt ceiling in there, and they got to get Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema on board. And Joe Manchin literally put his hands over his head at Chuck Schumer while he was making the speech and walked out of the room because he couldn't believe what Chuck Schumer was saying. Yeah, so this debt ceiling and the stimulus package are literally, their fates are tied. Yeah, here's what they have to say.
And households and the global economy and the status of the U.S. and the world. We shouldn't ever be in that position.
Of course, tied to this is the president's Build Back Better plan as well. Democrats are negotiating over the size of that plan right now, trying to get an agreement over around $2 trillion rather than the $3.5 trillion that President Biden proposed. Is the best way to do that by eliminating whole programs or trimming everything?
Well, different people, different members of Congress have different views on that. And there are active discussions taking place now among members of Congress, among Democrats, with the White House. And we're trying to figure out what is the best way to construct a package that would have huge payoffs for America, would not only address our hard infrastructure needs, roads, bridges, ports, railroads, infrastructure for the electric grid to promote, to enable us to address climate change, but also programs that would really help children succeed, help families succeed, participate in the labor force, the child tax credit, child care, early childhood education, community colleges. These are all important programs, and they're going to be hard choices to negotiate in the coming weeks.
Senator Manchin has proposed means testing some of the programs. Is that the best way to go, or do you need to make them universally available so they have stronger support?
Well, there's a trade-off there. We know that programs that are universal have tended to be long-lasting and very popular, but there's also an argument for, making sure that the highest income Americans perhaps don't get the benefit of a program that's most needed by those with lower income. And, even with the child tax credit that we're sending monthly checks now, there are limits, income limits for receiving those.
At some point, isn't the president aren't you going to have to weigh in on these arguments, on these disagreements?
We're working and talking with members of Congress, and, this is a healthy give and take that's going on right now among Democrats with different points of view on this. We do have a limit on the amount that we can spend, and there are hard trade-offs that are going to have to be made. But I think everyone realizes, all the Democrats in Congress, that this is an historic opportunity that we have to invest in this country to address some longstanding structural problems that have been holding back American families, making their lives difficult, making it hard for children to succeed, and making business more competitive, putting in place the investments that we need in this economy to help us compete. And I believe that Democrats will come together and do what's necessary and take advantage of this
One of the big
opportunity. It's important they do so.
Yeah, so we're really going to have a lot here to do as they got to get Joe Manchin on board, Kirsten Sinema on board, and a lot of the other moderates that are not on board with the prescription drug pricing. And that has to be on board, or, I mean, they can make some modifications on it, but they can't just remove the prescription drug pricing because that's a big pay for the package overall, because that pays for a lot of the stimulus package that has several $100 billion that it pays for the stimulus package. So the reason that pays for the package is because it actually saves the U.S. government hundreds of billions of dollars, because the U.S. government is the largest buyer of pharmaceuticals or prescription drugs. So by lowering the cost of that, it actually saves the government hundreds of billions of dollars, and they're going to use that savings, hundreds of billions of dollars, to pay for the stimulus package. So that's one way you can pay for it, is actually you can raise taxes on corporations, you can raise taxes on wealthy individuals, or you can save the US government hundreds of billions of dollars. It's actually the same type of thing. So if the government saves, say, $500 billion, that's $500 billion that you can then use on something like a stimulus package. So, for example, if they have to remove the entire prescription drug pricing, well, that's $500 billion that goes and it's now gone. So that would be a big pay for that would be gone. So, and it would be a huge disappointment to Americans, because we just had a statistic that we looked up yesterday that 66% of Americans use prescription drugs. So, literally 2 out of every 3 people watching this, on average, take prescription drugs. And I read a lot of your comments from yesterday saying, yeah, Jimmy, I take prescriptions, and a lot of them are very expensive. Even if they're not expensive, even if they're $20, $20, $20, $20, $20, all that adds up, right? Even if they're, even if you spend over the course of the whole year hundreds of dollars, imagine if that gets cut down. If it gets cut down by 25%, if it gets cut down by 50%, whatever it gets cut down to, any savings on your prescriptions adds up. So they want to significantly cut prescriptions, and honestly, this has been trying to go on for a while. Former President Donald Trump tried to cut prescriptions as well. So this would be a kind of stimulus to anybody that takes prescriptions. So which is 2/3 of Americans on average. So not everybody does, but the majority of Americans do. So this is a indirect type of stimulus. You don't actually get a check, but you do get a savings every single month if you pay less. And a lot of people, I've seen so many comments from you guys down below in the comment section saying, Jimmy, I have prescriptions I literally can't afford. I have prescriptions, or you guys are saying this in the comment section, that you have prescriptions that you can't buy because they're too expensive. So imagine if those were reduced enough to where you were able to buy them. And I've seen some comments from people saying that you have insulin and things like that that you have to buy, or else you literally can't survive. So, I mean, some of these things are literally your life depends on them. So imagine if you had your life dependent on it prescription. Now imagine if that was significantly reduced. significantly reduced. And that's why Bernie's tweet here is so famous. I don't know if it's famous just because I've featured it here on the channel several times, or it's just been featured on, around the world. But I mean, this tweet from Bernie Sanders is literally famous. The cost to manufacture one vial of insulin only cost them $6. It cost these pharmaceutical companies $6. The cost of one vial of insulin for consumers to other countries, they sell the same vial of insulin that it costs them $6 to make. They sell it to other countries for anywhere from $7 to $12. But yet they sell it to the US for $98. Now there's different types of insulin, so bear that in mind, right? And the price can definitely fluctuate, right? But why are they selling a vial of insulin in this particular example from Bernie Sanders for $98 when they're selling it to other countries for 7? And if they can sell it to other countries for 7, why are they selling it to the US and Americans for $98? And he says right here, American people should not be forced to pay the highest prices on the planet for prescription drugs. And honestly, I feel like this is why Bernie Sanders is so liked, because honestly, the guy's actually one of the poorest senators. I think he's been around so long. He's always pushing for the average everyday American, and he's taken on big pharma. He's taken on the large pharmaceutical companies. How many guys do you see in the Senate and the House taking on large pharmaceutical companies? Not many. Not many. You really don't see a lot of senators and representatives taking on large pharmaceutical companies. Go ahead and name them to me. There's not many of them. I'm not even sure I can think of any. I can't think of any other ones that are taking on large pharmaceutical companies. I could think of Bernie Sanders that comes to mind. Now, obviously, the Democratic Party is, because this is included in the stimulus package that is being done by the Democratic Party. But when I think of one person by name, the only person that comes to name is Bernie Sanders. He's the only one out, that I could single-handedly name by name. But honestly, it's just sad that they get away with selling this to the US for $98. And they're selling it to other countries for 7. So why do they sell it to other countries for 7 or $12 or $9 and they sell it to the US for 98? Because they can, because they get away with it and they're allowed to. And honestly, if they're allowed to sell it for 98, what's to stop them from selling it for 198 next month or next year, or 298 or 500 or 1,000? They could sell it for anything they wanted. What's to stop them? There's literally nothing stopping them. They're just making up their own prices. I mean, $98, it could be at $200 or $500 tomorrow. They're just making up a price here. Because they're selling it to $7 to freaking United Kingdom and Australia here. They're literally just making up a price at $98. It's sad. Really, it's sad. So I really hope that the United States and in this case wins and pharmaceutical companies lose, because pharmaceutical companies are making billions of dollars, man. Billions of dollars. Think about how much money they're making from the vaccine. So, and the government's paying for that. Thank God the people aren't paying for that, because could you imagine what that would be? A nightmare. People wouldn't even be getting it then if they had to pay for it. So they're making so much money, they don't even need to. They're making money hand over fist. So it's not like they're hurting. Nobody feels bad for them. They're making tons of money. So I don't think anybody feels bad for the pharmaceutical companies. Okay, even if they're forced to lower their prices, and all they'd have to do is have to sell the same prices that they sell to for other countries. Listen, if they're selling it to other countries for a set price that they already set, I think they'll be okay. I think they'll be okay. But I'll keep you up to date with all the stimulus items, what's going on in our country, and pretty much everything you need to know about. So make sure to subscribe down below. New videos come out here every day at 10 a.m., 3 p.m., and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will keep you up to date on everything. Make sure to click here if you didn't see my new video on possible $1,400 to $2,000 stimulus checks. I just had a good video on that here recently. So click on that video next. Thanks, guys, and I will see you in the next video.